I'm delighted to be here today representing a consortium who are really pushing for something slightly alternative here in the UK. At the moment, we're at a feasibility stage for a catenary-based truck, or something that actually runs off some overhead wires. Not a technology that's brand new. We may actually equate it back to those trolley buses that we saw at the turn of the century that are still running in some countries. But this is a new and modernized version of it. But as the CEO of Siemens Mobility, I talk an awful lot about decarbonization. The span of our offerings comes from the control of traffic through things like environmental zoning areas, plus speed cameras, through an awful lot of work with trains, including electrification, and now into a latest idea of an e-highway. What we do is we look at what we can offer to industry, what we can offer to society, and where the innovative technologies are lying. And we come together, in this case, in a consortium in order to bring what we have today. By doing so, we want to create jobs. But also we want to grow the economy. And in this country, of course, there's a huge agenda for levelling up. And we mustn't discount that as we look very much towards government as well. Road freight has been a somewhat thorny issue over the years in decarbonisation. And I think what we see here today is actually we're really moving forwards. And perhaps one of the things we need to think about is actually how we become better known and better publicised, particularly in the public domains as well, taking away all that focus from domestic travel as well. We're really proud to be coming into a trial of a e-highway. We've done it already in Germany, in Sweden, and in California. But here in the UK, we have an opportunity to actually fast track to the ultimate solution of having an e-highway, a decarbonised form of transportation on the road that is replacing what we've already seen as a polluting element of the transport sector. People often ask me, why am I putting so much into e-highways? Well, it's because it's complementary to everything that we're doing as Siemens, but everything we're doing as an industry. And it's about actually getting that integrated, decarbonised transport solution. It is multimodal, and this is one important part of it. And then one of the things that we're really passionate about is ensuring that we have decarbonised transport from the first mile to the last mile. If I take rail freight, it's a great decarbonised way of moving heavy goods from A to B, but it doesn't really help in the distribution of those goods where it's not suitable for an e-van. So, why do we need to decarbonise road freight? Well, perhaps this is a little bit of a rhetorical question because we've heard it many times today. The UK economy, UK industry is absolutely reliant on heavy good vehicles. And with 98% or thereabouts of consumer goods being delivered by road freight, we can't ignore it and we can't say there are alternatives. The disproportionate amount of carbon that we've already heard about that is emitted by heavy good vehicles needs to be addressed. The focus undoubtedly needs to remain on domestic vehicles because they are the major contributor. But once that modal shift starts, we need to move forwards. We've seen pledges coming out of 2050 and no more than 1.5 degrees rise. And we're also seeing great moves forwards here last week and this week in Glasgow. But we need to turn those into tangible actions by us as an industry. In my mind, electrification is one of the most sustainable solutions moving forwards. I'm a great fan of taking power from wires, whether it's with rail or with trucks. But I'm also absolutely greatly pleased to see that we already have working solutions with battery and that we have alternative fuels coming online, all demonstrated here under one roof. So, our solution for an e-highway is to directly power vehicles from those wires up above, using a network of overhead cables. We can do this efficiently, providing we have the infrastructure, which we've just heard about, and we can also utilize many green power sources. Some could be even localized, whether it be wind or solar. It also saves time in that we don't need to actually have those charging points in all instances, because the last mile and first mile that an e-truck will be doing can either be under its alternative power solution, in this case an earlier diesel derivative, or under a battery, a medium-sized battery with a limited range. The energy would be transferred directly from the grid to the vehicle's motor through a pantograph. Pantographs may seem a novelty. It actually does look quite formidable when you see it in reality, taking the height of the truck up much higher. But this is based on existing technologies that have been developed over many, many years and are still under development today. And they're already really well proven, both on trains and with trams. While connected to the grid, additional energy can be captured by a small battery inside the vehicle. And on full charge, in today's technology, we would advocate that this battery should be sized to around 50 miles and no longer, so that limits the range from the e-highway, but it also means that we can build an infrastructure of distribution connected around our new network of e-highways, enabling the last and first mile deliveries. Please have a look at this and have a look at the back at our simulator. Have a go at driving one of these. It's great fun, it's interactive, and let's hope it may be the future. What we're seeing in other countries is similar to what we're seeing here. Okay, some countries are slightly ahead of us, particularly in Germany, where they have trials underway. But we need to act today, and we need to continue to push all the regulators and all the stakeholders actually that are required to bring these future technologies on board. Otherwise, some of these dates may be missed. I don't underestimate what it's going to take to actually put up a whole lot of wires over one lane of our motorway in both directions. But I also don't underestimate the contribution that that can give. So, I talk as a Siemens, but actually I'm here representing a consortium, a very powerful consortium. Costain, Scania, SRF, possible Arup, SPL, Box, MRL and G-Planning. All together here in the UK, taking a UK solution forwards. Through Innovate UK, DFT has funded a consortium of organisations, and we're doing the first ever feasibility study into electric roads, otherwise known as the e-highway. And on the back of this, we will test the operability and feasibility and indeed the standards that's required in order to operate a new technology like this. The study, first off, is going to look at only 20 kilometres, but actually 20 kilometres is a pretty good test bed, of the M180 close to Scunthorpe. So a motorway environment that is perhaps not the most densely used motorway in the UK, but importantly, it's very close to the port of Immingham, which is one of our goals to link perhaps the ports of Immingham, Hull with Liverpool in due course via the M62. This is also one of the newly created free port zones, as is Liverpool, and again there are synergies that come on the back of that. So the pilot's not just about testing the technology. I could argue actually that technology exists and it's been tested elsewhere. But we want to know that the whole logistic pipeline, the whole system is feasible. We want to think about actually what it's going to take in terms of that integrated freight network and the full distribution that comes with it. And then we can fully cost this up and look at how it can be scaled up on a national basis. We see this study bringing in all parties and stakeholders, and of course the local stakeholders as well. And as I look at our consortium members, we all bring our own areas of expertise. And that is really quite specialised when it comes to sustainable transport. And we're supported by other organisations within our supply chain to ensure that we get the current and future approvals that are required. One of the things that's really important to make sure is that we do have the right framework in order to roll this out, that it's correctly regulated, and importantly, that it's viable and it is financially viable as well. And I think this is a great example of how the transportation industry is coming together. Because here we are talking about freight, with perhaps a company that you would more equate to trains, with Costain, who you equate with civil engineering, and all our other players that are across the transportation spectrum, and of course with Scania, who are really very, very focused upon road freight and one of the leading players. So opportunities. I think you have an idea of what we're talking about. And e-highway does represent a huge opportunity, but not just for the environmental benefits that it brings. Ramping up this investment across the whole country will enable us to hit the decarbonisation targets that have been committed already, but only if we do it in time. We're investing in the future, but we're also upskilling the next generation of engineers at the forefront of a new technology that will lead part of sustainable transport on a global basis. Investing in the northeast and the north is part of the levelling up of the British economy, and it brings investment into Yorkshire and Humber. In terms of vehicle investment, the cost efficiency of running e-highway ready vehicles, the cost efficiency of running e-highway ready vehicles could mean that they have a payback period in the region of 18 months in terms of fuel saving. Investors in the electrification infrastructure would see a return from the sales of electricity and could see a full return within 15 years, making infrastructure investment an appealing opportunity for private finance. And over a 15-year period, around 200,000 e-highway ready HGVs would need to be manufactured, and e-highways would give rise to a new industry providing installation and maintenance of the system. So our pilot is aiming to prove the viability of low carbon, low energy, low cost freight within the UK and across Europe. And we heard mention of interoperability. It is also intended to be fully interoperable with our European colleagues, subject to obviously the rollout across more European countries. Beyond the initial pilot, a three-phase rollout would aim to decarbonise nearly all of the major road network within the UK, and that would lead to around 90% decarbonisation of road freight industry with the other alternatives, and hopefully a long-term cost in the region of £20 billion, which is a small price to pay for that decarbonisation. If the UK is going to achieve net zero by 2050 and 2045 here in Scotland, we need to really be well on our journey with the rollout of e-highway by 2026. That isn't very long. We as a consortium, with others, can demonstrate that electric roads exist, that this is viable, that it can actually have a fast-track trial, and we can hit that timescale. We're seeing today that the environment is there, and we need this final push forwards in order to make it happen. So thank you for paying attention to e-highway. And one final word, e-highway is one solution that helps decarbonise freight. What we also see is the advent of huge battery technologies, and we also see the advent of hydrogen. These are, again, in parallel with what we're seeing elsewhere in the transport sector. And because of that, it forms part of our integrated approach moving forwards.